Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Rory McLennan, coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. At least 100 people were killed in airstrikes targeting a ceremony held by pro-democracy supporters in Myanmar's Sagaing region on the 11th of April. The exact number of casualties is not yet verified. Local media reported that the attack occurred during an inauguration of a regional administrative body opposing the military regime. According to an anonymous witness, a fighter plane dropped bombs directly onto a crowd of civilians, followed by a helicopter firing at the scene. United Nations officials have slammed the airstrikes, which appear to be one of the deadliest attacks by the Myanmar military since they seized power more than 2 years ago. The military has also stepped up its attacks in majority Christian states by targeting churches, schools and other institutions. According to figures released by the United Nations on Tuesday, civilian deaths in Ukraine have reached nearly 8,500 since the war in the country began, with the agency warning that actual figures are considerably higher. Since the beginning of the Russian invasion in February last year, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights estimates that 8,490 civilians had been killed and 14,244 had been injured as of the 9th of April this year. Information from some locations where intense hostilities have been going on has been delayed, and many reports are still pending confirmation. The majority of the more than 22,700 casualties confirmed come from regions under the authority of the Ukrainian government. Russia has consistently denied targeting civilian infrastructure such as hospitals, residential structures and schools. US Attorney General Merrick Garland came under scathing attack from Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri on Tuesday for providing false testimony to the Senate in March, saying that he and his department were not cultivating sources within Catholic churches. Hawley said he wanted to know how many spies are providing information to the department from within religious communities. In a letter addressed to Garland, Hawley said that his department decided to turn Catholic congregations into front organisations for the FBI. He accused Garland of fudging the truth before Congress when asked about planting informants within Catholic congregations. Hawley termed it an unconscionable attack on the First Amendment rights of American Catholic believers and an abdication of duty to enforce the law without fear or favour. All this happened in the background of a leaked FBI memo which alleges that traditionalist Catholic groups adhere to an anti-Semitic, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ and white supremacist ideology. An increasing number of US states with Democratic governors are hoarding drugs for abortions. This is in response to their expectation that a Texas federal court decision on mifepristone would limit access to the procedure in the country. For use in their states, the governors of New York, Washington, Massachusetts and California disclosed that they had started to assemble years' worth of medical abortion supplies. Doubting that the ban on the abortion bill would be upheld by the higher courts in the coming days, the governors started to stockpile the pills. The controversy over abortion exploded again last week due to conflicting decisions made by federal judges in Texas and Washington about the continued legality of the most commonly used abortion drug. The judiciary is currently trying to resolve the issue. A report released on Tuesday showed that the founding fathers of the University of Minnesota engaged in genocide and ethnic cleansing of Native Americans in the 19th century, which benefited the university financially. The Minnesota Indian Affairs Council and the university collaborated on the investigation, which revealed that the university created and taught revisionist narratives meant to hide the systemic harm done to Indigenous peoples. The Truth Project, an acronym for Towards Recognition and University Tribal Healing, brought out the revelations in a 500-page report. The project, which started in 2020, aims to shed light on how institutions throughout the country were constructed using funds from land confiscated from Indians by the 1862 Morrill Act. The study claimed that the institution's founders utilised their influence in government to pass anti-Indigenous legislation that was profitable for them and the organisation. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Jose Francisco Calzai, has applauded the Vatican's recent rejection of the so-called doctrine of discovery and expressed the hope that other countries will do the same. The doctrine of discovery was a theory used to justify the appropriation of Indigenous lands from their legitimate owners by sovereign conquerors. The Indigenous people's rights experts stated that the doctrine of discovery remains an open wound for many Indigenous peoples around the world. The UN official hailed the Holy See's awareness of the negative consequences of colonisation, especially the suffering endured by Indigenous peoples. He also welcomed Pope Francis's exhortation to promote mutual respect and dialogue and to abandon the colonising mentality. In a joint statement from the Dicasteries for Culture and Integral Human Development on March the 30th, the Vatican officially rejected those concepts that failed to recognise the inherent human rights of Indigenous peoples. Archbishop Ignatius Kaigama of Abuja has said that Nigerians can still regain their nation despite threats and oppression. During his Easter message, the Catholic prelate urged the faithful not to let their hopes down amid the terror threats posed to the people of God in the West African nation. The Archbishop also urged the faithful to sharpen their resolve and zeal in addressing problems ranging from poverty and unemployment to insecurity and corruption. He also called on the faithful to work together towards peace and unity in the country. Meanwhile, worship has resumed in St. Francis Xavier Church of Ondo Diocese in Owo, which was attacked on Pentecost Sunday last year. Gunmen killed nearly 50 worshippers during Holy Mass, marking the solemnity of Pentecost. In Australia, the executive director of the main body coordinating Catholic schools has said that Catholic education will strive to ensure that voices of people of faith will be heard amid threats to religious freedom. Jacinta Collins, the executive director of the National Catholic Education Commission, made this assertion while speaking at Newman College in Melbourne. She was responding to the Australian Law Reform Commission's proposed amendments of norms governing faith-run educational institutions. Collins bemoaned that religious belief was becoming increasingly countercultural and marginalised in society. She said the move to eliminate the presence of the church is explicit in demands to remove prayer and scripture classes from public schools and to deny funds to faith-based educational institutions. The Hungarian State Secretary of Foreign Affairs called the Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jan Lipavsky, and said that his nation should not meddle in their child protection law. This law, which seeks to protect children from the LGBTQ agenda, was heavily criticised by the Czech Foreign Minister. The Hungarian law bans the use of material that would in any way promote homosexuality and gender change in schools. Lipavsky condemned the proposal, stating that characters in books and on television won't influence children. In response to the same, Secretary of Foreign Affairs Tamás Mencár said that Hungary doesn't interfere with Czech legislation and that this should be reciprocated. Meanwhile, the European Union Commission has questioned the law and filed a lawsuit against Hungary. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan has raised concerns over the appalling state of human rights in Balochistan province. There is growing public anger in Balochistan about disappearances, economic exclusion, restrictions on journalistic freedom, and poor governance. An October 2022 survey by the Commission found a palpable sense of outrage among inhabitants. Several people even went so far as to call Balochistan a colony of the state. A team comprising journalists and Commission members talked with civil society members, lawyers, human rights defenders and others to gauge further details of the state of human rights there. In response to the rising number of women who have discarded their hijabs, violating the Islamic country's strict dress code, the Iranian government has begun installing cameras in public places. Women who break the law will receive warning text messages regarding penalties. Many Iranian women have been ditching their veils since the custodial death of 22-year-old Kurdish woman Mahsa Amini. Protests erupted in the wake of Amini's death, and they were met with a brutal crackdown by the government. Despite the risks, videos have flooded social media showing women defying the obligatory dress code as they enter malls, restaurants, shops and streets. In Britain, a group of disability rights activists is extremely concerned over the possibility that they won't even be asked to provide public testimony before a House of Commons inquiry investigating assisted suicide. The Health and Social Care Committee started hearing oral testimony about assisted suicide becoming legal in England and Wales last month. They heard from 3 academics and 4 peers at the first session. Disability rights advocacy group Not Dead Yet UK expressed concerns that it would not even be called to provide testimony to the committee. The group is seeking a guarantee that individuals with disabilities or their group will be asked to provide oral testimony. During the hearing, Lord Faulkner and the chair of the advocacy organisation Dignity in Dying, Baroness Meacher, argued in favour of assisted suicide. On the other hand, Baroness Finlay and Baroness Hollands protested against the practice. Since none of the academics in the oral evidence panel opposed assisted suicide, questions have been raised regarding potential biases in the investigation. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again tomorrow for more, and do remember, you can always visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.